Hello everyone, welcome to the Hue virtual chat. Well, it is finally a bright and sunny day and it's going to be warm. And just to see the sun, it has lifted so many different moods here in our city. So I'm going to open up the door now to our wonderful ladies to join us here for the Hue virtual chat. Let's get right down to it. Oh my goodness, hello Cynthia. Good to see you. Susie, yay! And oh, nice. Oh my goodness, nice to see you again, Geraldine, again. I know. And hello, Robin. Thank you. You're such a busy person, but you know what? I'm going to start with you. I always kind of let you stew and then, like hit you with the big question. But yeah, I need some help here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. But I think it's okay. I think it's okay now. But over the weekend, long story short, my husband hadn't been feeling well for a little over the week. He decided that he was going to go get a COVID test just to be safe and sure. But it was that time, like when he was going to get the test, when he came home, and then we sat there, and it was all this what if. And the stress and anxiety in those 24 hours before we found out that he was negative, I cannot describe. And, and it kind of has a lingering fact. Here, it's a test negative, and yay, a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. Yeah. And then I want to introduce everybody to Geraldine. Hello, Linda. So good to see you.
Hi.
It's kind of and sort of like the topic that I kind of want to talk about. Geraldine emailed me back and apologized saying sorry or whatever last week. I just wanted to let things marinate. I just wasn't myself and everything like that. And I've seen posts where people they now literally say, sorry, either, mentally I'm just not there, or, I just kind of let things slide. So are you seeing more of this, Robin, now? I mean, or is it just becoming more of a common thing with everybody? I thank God today was sunny, because I don't know, I think I would have gone ballistic if I woke up to another gray, cold, cloudy day, and let alone have snow falling.
Look, I think the accumulation has an impact on people. I think when this is my personal view, right? So that's about what it's worth. That's the scientific evidence, me thinking what I think. I think when this all started, people were like, oh, a couple of months will be good. And then, we were like hanging in there. And then Manitoba, we hit the big restrictions because things were going crazy. And everyone was like, well, I can dig it in here. I'm not doing great, but I can dig it in. I can see like the end. We'll just hang in there. And yeah, people weren't feeling great. I'm with you. I had the app tell me a few months ago, in the middle of that second wave, you've hung out with someone. And I'm like, I haven't been anywhere. What the hell?
No,
Been
yeah.
at the grocery store. I stood in line. Did the person behind me stand too close? And that was, I think it was 2 days before Christmas. I was completely freaked because, predominantly with my heart condition, I'm dead. And I was like, oh. And I think people are talking about it more because lots of people are struggling with the ongoingness of this, right? And yes, we see vaccination, but then we hit this and we're like, who's the numbnuts hanging? This is me. Who's the idiots hanging out together? Who are those numbnuts? Like, why can't they just stop it? And then I'm like, okay, people are doing what they're doing to get through a tough situation. And I have to remember that. And I have to have compassion that, like, people may have different views on me. And I think it's the fatigue of something going on and on and on. And people are more prepared to talk about it because more people are saying, I'm not okay. And I'm not having a great time and I need a break. Like, truth be told, well, I'm going to share, like on Sunday, I curled up on the couch and I was hysterical all day because I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever see my mum again, right? My mum's 85 this year. Will I ever see her again? Will I ever get to touch the ground of my country again? Like, and I built a life where I traveled. I traveled between 6 and 9 months a year for the last 20 years. And all of a sudden, February 26th last year, it was like, and I got my energy from traveling and hiding in a hotel, but like traveling and seeing people, and my friends are across the world, and I created this world where I would go and see them once every year or two. I have no idea when I'm going to see my close friends again. I've moved to Winnipeg. I spent so much time working on my business. I didn't create close friends here. I didn't create a network, and the other day it completely overwhelmed me. And I was like, the person I'm dating called me and I was just sobbing. And I was like, I work in mental health. Why can't I deal with this? What am I? And she said, like, you have created this life of movement and it stopped in a heartbeat. And maybe if you allow yourself to feel like that, you'll feel a bit better. And I did, right? And I you know, it's still lingering there, but I think the more we talk about it, the more we hear that other people are struggling too, and being with each other and bearing witness and hearing each other out is the place that will hopefully get us all through this. And truth be told, some of us will not get through it, right? We don't know what the statistics of people taking their life is, and we won't know that for a while, right? But I would say the isolation is, like, for some people, just not what they can get through. So if we can reach out and bear witness to each other, even when things are tough, and take self-preservation, take some time for us when it's tough too, and be unapologetic about it. I need some time for me. Sunday, I needed to cry on the couch for the day. But I can also share that and say, if that's where you're at, do what you need to do in that moment and stop trying to please other people, because we can't keep trying to please other people. We have to put our own oxygen mask on first. See, there, I rambled. How was that for you?
Well, it kind of made me feel a little bit better, Robin. Yeah, wow. It's just, and I think, well, for me personally, I have a hard time saying no, or I have a hard time like, okay, I got to do this because because somebody else needs this, or, but I want to, like, yeah, share with everybody to meet Geraldine. And I mean, when I emailed you back, and I mean, I love the word marinate.
So I mean it in a non-alcoholic way, by the way.
Oh, well, yes, yes. Oh, yeah. But I mean, first of all, I guess, Geraldine, share a little bit about what you do. And, and I guess my question to you is it okay? And I know Susie has always said it's okay to take time for yourself. But, and her voice always pops in the back of my head. But it's that, can you do it? Or is that, it's that moment when you kind of like, okay, I'm just not going to do it. And, you shed all of that, all of those other little voices or whatever, of the what ifs and, what if I don't, and I should, and I should.
Ugh, the shoulds.
Yeah, I know.
We're shoulding all over ourselves. And it's, hi everybody. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you, Tracy, for responding so swiftly to my email to you yesterday. And I wasn't expecting to be here today, but I'm really pleased. So I'm an executive coach, and I have my own practice. and I see clients one-on-one, predominantly women. I am also a coach with a woman in the States who was my mentor and my coach, and she runs a program called Great Big Journey. Her name is Steph Jagger, and I work with her on that program. I'm launching a couple of other programs, which I might tell you about later, and one that caught your eye, Tracy, called In the Clearing, Creating Space for Women's Intuition. So, but it's so interesting, Robin, you pretty much nailed everything that could be said about the state of how we're all feeling these days, right? And the notion of self-care and stepping back. And I think that was a post I made recently, Tracy, which caught your eye. And it's, I think, even more than allowing ourselves permission self-care, it's not allowing self-abandonment, not to give over of ourselves when there's no gas in the tank, and to know what those things are that replenish us and refuel us. And there's so much energy movement happening in the world, so much polarity, and that creates all kinds of reactions and emotions and intensities and whatnot all. And we're so polarized about everything. And I think we won't know, as you know, what Robin was talking about earlier, I don't think we're going to know the impact of this time for each of us until sometime down the road when, you know, we can see things 2020. So the importance and the value of what I coach with clients about is, can you slow down? What if you just slowed down, moved slower, moved more quietly, dropped some things off the plate? You know, to borrow a well-said phrase from Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, be prepared to disappoint as many people as it takes so that you don't disappoint yourself. And I think, you know, for some of us, for women especially, maybe not, I'm not sure, but there's this mentality that we can't disappoint, that somehow that's wrong to disappoint other people, that you're here to live up to everyone's expectations of you. And I think that's a messed up message. And I think that's one we can afford to shed, you know? And so kindness, compassion to self, setting boundaries internally with self, you know, that self-loathing and shoulding all over myself that's a boundary I set with myself for myself. Mm-hmm. So all kinds of big ideas there as a first contribution to this conversation. And those are my initial thoughts.
Oh, well, you're right. And sure enough, Robin Priest has a free course that you can take, getting rid of the shoulds. Go to robinpriestlivyourtruth.com. That's just an unpaid announcement. No.
It's free. It's like
free.
If it was an advertisement for a cost, like I'd get it, but it's a free course. It's there's Peer Connections Manitoba. Get some money for government for some family peer support, and we developed that course, but I think it relates to anyone, and if we have enough, then we'll run it more often, right? So come and play.
Yeah, that's
Thanks
definitely.
for the plug.
You're welcome. I'm going to throw this out there. Maybe, you know, Susie and Linda, and hi, Susan, good to see you, and hi, Kirsten, too. Geraldine, you said women, I guess, have this in them that they don't want to disappoint. My question to everyone is that maybe a cultural thing? Because I know, and Geraldine's nodding her head, yes, because I know in the Japanese culture, you know, women are there to serve their men. And that is, you know, an innate kind of thing in our culture. Susie, I think, pretty much so in the Filipino community too as well. And you know, and even if we go to the Eastern European, you know, communities too as well. But, you know, and I guess I don't know what my question would be, but how much does that sway too when you're trying to get rid of that, you know, you're not there to serve, you know, you're allowed to be disappointed or disappoint people.
Mm-hmm. There's a way of thinking that goes beyond just our life. I mean, it's patriarchal. That goes back millennia.
Mm-hmm.
It will, you know, I'm witnessing a whole language among women right now who are taking that back and actively working towards breaking down patriarchal barriers. We can see systems are breaking down. So it's a process for sure, but those are conversations that are happening. And so we start questioning, that's a belief that you grew up with. Is it your belief? Mm-hmm. Is it yours? Or is it one that was put upon you? And can that be peeled away? But I mean, we build up all these beliefs, you know, all our lives by things that we absorb or are taught or sometimes are forced upon us a little bit more coercively. But, you know, and that can be part of a coaching experience, is to peel away those things that actually don't belong to you. They're not your beliefs. They're not your truths. Oh, okay. So what is your truth? What is your belief?
Wow, interesting.
And where do you want to take it? Mm-hmm. And how will that inform how you move forward? Right?
Wow. Linda, oh, it's so good to see you. You know, going on beliefs, and you've talked about beliefs and creating your new ones. How important is it now to create your own beliefs and possibly your own personality in this world now where there's just so much information and so much to do and take in?
Love that question. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you, Geraldine. We met briefly before, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. I was just writing about creating beliefs this morning, I believe it was my post, and I was talking about creating beliefs around death because my mother passed away just very recently, within the last 2 weeks, and I am at the point of trying to create ritual and meaning out of a funeral process that we are now being denied. And so my sisters and I and my children are very actively creating new rituals to ground us, to experience this loss in a meaningful way that that gives me some strength. So one of the things that I was writing about today that I was so happy resonated with so many people was I was writing about this moment. My kids and I went to the cemetery before the viewing for my mom, and we happened to see 2 geese flying overhead, and my daughter Lucy said, "Hey, there's Grandma and Papa." And it was just this lovely moment, and it really sunk into me. Like, it was really meaningful to see this beautiful essence of spirit, and to have to go to the viewing later that night and confront the reality of death. And it was so lovely to read people's comments saying, "I see my mother in a butterfly. I see my stepfather in a rainbow. I see my grandmother in a cardinal." It was this outpouring of so many people who have these beliefs, and they are created beliefs. And beliefs are really, as Geraldine was saying, they're optional. We get to choose our beliefs. We get to choose because beliefs are really just thoughts we tell ourselves over and over again. And as Geraldine was saying, some of those thoughts are implanted from the patriarchy from, you know, many years, and they're not something that we would actively choose. But some thoughts are ones that we've had ourselves, that we've chosen, that no longer serve us, that don't give us strength, that don't give us freedom or opportunities to move forward into our futures. So, you know, Geraldine and I both work in coaching, and Susan as well. And really at the core of it is you are holding space for your clients' beliefs. And if you came to me with a, you know, a goal or a dream that you have that you want to fulfill, but you don't quite believe it yet, I believe it for you. I believe that you can do it, and I help you create the thoughts that are going to catch you up to that dream, that future self, and meeting that future self. So yeah, that um, belief in your possibilities and in your future self, I think is something that we have to actively work on right now, because we are so tied into the realities that have been constricted. So we are all feeling this constriction, this smallness, this, you know, this lack of movement, and it is affecting our mental health. And Robin, so many of us have been on the couch, bawling our eyes out on a Sunday afternoon. It's always those Sunday afternoons. Douglas Adams had the best quote about that. It was the long, dark tea time of the soul. And it gets us. So I have to say, for me, what has helped me is exactly what you were saying, Geraldine: slowing down, stripping away anything that is superfluous, anything unnecessary. When I'm in that state of either grief or just that kind of despair, just getting yourself fed, just getting yourself to move your body so those emotions can go through your body. You know, we're so when we get in this state, we tense up, we're stressed, we move in, and to be able to move your body in a gentle, heart-opening way can be so helpful in those moments.
Wow.
So thank you, Krista.
Wow. And I can also say hot yoga also helps too. And thank God they haven't closed down, because, well, if they do, there's going to be one ballistic person. No.
Do you know that when my mom started to fail, this was like about 3 weeks ago, and I knew where we were heading, I immediately started a 30-day yoga practice at home. I knew that I would need something to move that grief through my body. And I'm a big believer in yoga for doing that.
Oh, well, good. Well, I'm going to go to Cynthia, who now is like sipping her coffee, because I'm reading a couple. I get to see all your comments now, so I feel like I'm in your chat. Thank you, Graham. So, Cynthia, of all of the people here, you, and I don't know, and I say this honestly, have probably done the most self-exploring, looking at your beliefs, changing your beliefs, and choosing the ones that are authentically yours. You know, not only through your whole personal journey, but even now, because you've transplanted yourself to the UK. You're not at home to speak, but certainly it was your intention to be traveling. And then you've done this whole other comment on your favorite season.
Yeah, my favorite season, the fall of the patriarchy. And I say that somewhat with jest, because it's true, but the reality is that a lot of people misconstrue the idea of the patriarchy being men. It's a male system, and the fact it's a system, and men are victims of it. That's where we see toxic masculinity comes from. That's where, which is an aspect of the alpha male society that creates that toxicity within men. And the reality is that society doesn't teach women the same things that they teach men. And of course, that's, if you will, my superpower, is that I've seen life from both sides of the gender coin. And so therefore I can see all perspectives from both eyes of the gender. And of course, my whole raison d'etre is to bring acceptance to everyone, and in teaching that, help women learn, you know, what I had 50 years of exposure to in order to empower them to better their lives. And that whole cycle is realizing that these systems don't work anymore. We're seeing that clearly. You know, Geraldine spoke to it. And the whole idea is the realization that we need to start figuring out different ways to flip this. And, you know, I even go back to, because when you have that kind of talk, when we start using those words, you know, very much it kind of falls into, quote, a feminist kind of role. And I like to suggest that, you know, that we're moving beyond feminism 3.0, and I won't unpack the history, but the realization is, I think we're really moving into this space where, you know, gosh, if we don't realize that Mother Earth is the most critical feminist issue on this planet that we have to deal with, then everything else is kind of secondary. And so this whole idea of coming out, starting to reconstruct, deconstruct, and reconstruct new systems to reprioritize, not only based upon gender, but based upon, again, and it's not about equality. None of this is, it's all about equity, because everything is not about making it equal. That doesn't work. The oppressed are still oppressed at the same level. You need equity in order to uplift others. And when they're truly uplifted, you can achieve equality. And that's why we need to move it around. So yeah, so my favorite season's the fall of the patriarchy, because, well, it just doesn't work anymore.
Are you going to run for, what is it? Oh, it's the prime minister, isn't it, there over there too? Yes, I think you should. You'll get all of our votes, but I don't think our votes will count. But my goodness, or come back here and please run for premier, okay? Or yeah, I think so. You make it sound so simple, and thank you, because you kind of, but it's not simple. But you know, I think the more that we talk about it, I think obviously more people are going to start to listen and realize that there is very, very big truth into all of what you said. I'm going to go to Susie now. Susie, I love the glasses. Makes you look like Superwoman with superpowers.
I don't know about that, but...
Well, and, you know, and we're talking about beliefs and everything like that. And it was interesting because, and when Geraldine said that, you know, people have beliefs, and when you ask them, I don't think they're truly your beliefs. You're just saying that, or you think that you believe in them. Haha. The naysayers against vaccines, that vaccines are bad and everything like that. And now when you look at what we're in, I'm wondering, can those people change their beliefs then against things like that? Or is that pretty...
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that beliefs aren't necessarily facts, right? And sometimes we're conditioned to believe something because we're scared, or because there's fear there, or there's... structures in place, like Cynthia said, you know, and beliefs can be moved. They can be changed with new information, with, you know, a change of heart, or whatever it might be, right? And a couple of things to unpack from what Geraldine and Cynthia were talking about is that I did something in the last couple of weeks where I had to do something for myself, for my mental health. And it was a very challenging thing to do, and not something that conventionally society would say it was okay to do. You know, it was a big risk and a big leap, but it was such that my mental health has been not good since January, you know, kind of thing. I'm sure if you see my Instagram, I post all the time about how my walks like literally saved my life, because it's the only time that I get to be with myself and just with my thoughts and my podcast, and, you know, like marching on. And I had to take this step, and I don't consider it brave per se, but it was brave in the sense that, you know, when you say you're scared about disappointing other people, right? So if we unpack that for a little bit, we talk about disappointing other people. What that means is that we have internalized what other people believe or think about us. Susie is reliable. Tracy is, you know, someone I can depend on. Cynthia is always going to be there for me when I need her, and I can give her any job and she'll get it done. All of those things, right? And the thing about, taking back our power and doing things for ourselves that are, I don't like to use the word selfish, but in this context, it's selfish, is that when you do something for yourself, whether it's to save your physical health, your mental health, your financial health, whatever that might be, other people might look at that and think it's selfish. But what is selfish about doing something to save yourself? Right? Like Robin mentioned, putting on your oxygen mask first, right? Am I selfish if I put my oxygen mask on first before putting on yours? Like, that's not considered selfish. That's considered life-saving. That's considered absolutely fundamental to your existence, right? So I think we need to reframe how we look at these things, and that doing something for yourself, whether it's saying no to a committee, turning down, a volunteer opportunity or any kind of commitment, no is a full sentence. And we don't owe people explanations for how we make decisions about our lives. That is something that's very female, I think, is the idea that we have to explain, we have to compensate, we have to, apologize. No, I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm doing that because I don't want my kids, especially my daughter, to see me internalize that patriarchy and to make excuses for what I need to do for myself. Now, this is not about not being compassionate. This is not about not being a good friend or not being a good mother or wife or partner, whatever you want to look at it. But there has to be an understanding that women need to do what we need to do for ourselves sometimes without any explanation. And we're not allowed that opportunity. We are not allowed that grace. And you are seeing that right now with anti-maskers. That is a completely patriarchal thing, all wrapped up in a whole bunch of other isms and things like that. Suddenly, we're under the evidence that men don't like being told what to do with their body. Well, how strange is that when women have had to live with being told to what to do with our bodies, how to dress it, how to undress it, how to cover it up, how to breastfeed, how to look on a beach, how to not look on a beach. You don't even belong on a beach. All of this bullshit. And there's so much bullshit wrapped up in that, right? So, but bullshit is patriarchy. So what else is new? It's just another Tuesday. But to go back to what Cynthia was saying, I posted on my Facebook this week, and I'll share it with the Hugh group. There was an absolutely fantastic podcast I listened to last week by Laverne Cox, and she had a guest on, and she talked about what this patriarchal society means in terms of, how we look at what's feminine and what's masculine, the gender binary. And it asked us to look past the gender binary. And one of the things that was so important about this, so one of the most educational and informative podcasts to lay bare how the feminine has been tied to reproduction to enforce patriarchy. And this is from my post. Please be brave and open enough to listen and learn. This human experience that we share is wide, varied, and daring to be so vulnerable and beautiful. So in this podcast description, Alok Vaid Menon, simply known as Alok, joins Laverne for an inside perspective on what it means to live in a world as a person who does not belong on either side of the traditional gender binary, meaning strictly male or female. Alok, who uses the pronouns they and them, is a gender non-conforming writer and performance artist. As a mixed media artist, Alok explores themes of gender, race, trauma, belonging, and the human condition. They are the author of Femme in Public and Beyond the Gender Binary. And in 2019, they were honored as one of NBC's Pride 50 and Out Magazine's Out 100. They have presented their work in more than 40 countries. This podcast was so amazing. I'm going to share it with you all on our page there, because what it talks about is that once we take away the reproductive factor from what femininity is tied to, that liberates us all from patriarchy. Because what the feminine means and what embracing that non-binary experience means is that we are all capable of empowering ourselves, again, through that equity that Cynthia talked about, and only then can we have equality. I'll stop now before I start. Yeah.
I don't know how anybody can see a lot of hands waving, a lot of hearts. Wow.
So I'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
If you are trapped in the belief that there is a gender binary and that biology means this and biology means that, science is showing us every single day that that's absolutely not true, right? And that is not just a belief, that's scientific fact. And as we get more and more able to explore what that means on a genetic level, it brings us back to one fundamental conclusion. We are all human beings. And what do I say every single day? Every single human being deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. What's between your legs is not as important as what's between your ears. Use your brain, use your head, and use your heart.
And she drops the mic. But it, you know, and maybe is it true then? You know, and Cynthia, please join in, and all the other ladies too. And Robin, I think we are growing to be towards more acceptance without understanding. I think. You know, we want to embrace everybody, and like Susie, you so eloquently put it, if you take away what's between our legs that defines us, we are definitely human beings. And we've been saying that all along, even through all of this, you know, racism and everything like that. And I mean, Susie, I want to ask you, sorry, I'm going off topic. Did you see that horrific video of that poor boy in, I believe it was Alberta, beaten up, just chased down? He's going to catch his bus after school, and the group of kids ganged up on him and beat him up. He had concussion. He's 13 years old. You know, so we know, as we're talking about this whole mental.
By, Tracy? I
Pardon?
didn't see it. Thank goodness I didn't see it. But what was it motivated by?
Race. It's a racial incident, and but the video was absolutely horrific. And these are 13, 12, whatever year olds. And, you know, and this all kind of spills into, right, beliefs. And, and you know, you don't want to say any, you know, because we don't know, of course, but to see an act of violence and that vile on a young child, to me, and, you know, where are we heading? And I think, you know, this is whole conversation of human beings and how we're treating each other, regardless of male, female, or whatever gender. I mean, it comes just down to being your own human rights. But anyways, yeah, Cynthia, your kind of comment now on the whole, you know, and you can go globally because you're in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, that case of Alberta, that's just, I'm not even going to say it's shocking anymore. It's just so sad. The idea of acceptance is not what's between your legs, it's what's between your ears. That's where it lives. And that's what I've encountered. I mean, just yesterday, I had my first encounter here in the UK of not having acceptance. And it was really interesting, the response, because my first response was I shrank. I shrank from, you know, and it was microaggressions. It was done through an attempt at humor. But obviously I'm so aware and spent 5 years now understanding many, many nuances that it was very clear to me. And I still had people who are close to me going, I don't get it. And so I'm having to explain all the levels. And that's why it's between your ears. And so it's about raising our consciousness and our awareness. And if the values and beliefs and behaviors that you are working on are the ones that were given to you, which most of us are shaped into who we are through 8 years old. And then we kind of mature into kind of making a lot of that. And so if you go back, you literally have to go back and unpack and go, why do I think that? Is that my thought? Did somebody give it to me? Do I still agree to it? And if not, what is my thought about that? Or what is my behavior or so forth? And yeah, this is the hard work that you need to do on yourself as you move through this process. And in every society, they have kind of, and I've shared before here, so I'm not going to unpack it, but you know, different experiences with the depth of what is between their ears. And to many, it's like you go on and live your life and it has no bearing on a number of cultural factors. I think of the 9 months that I was living in South America, heavily Catholic country, or countries, but they kind of went, you do you and do us, and as long as you aren't impacting us, we really don't care. And I think part of it was because I was obviously seen as a foreigner in those settings, but the reality
Cynthia,
is,
can I bring up something about that?
yeah,
Your experience in Chile. One of the things that a lot talks about, and something I was reading about too, and I knew this just from my mother's experience, is that in a lot of before colonization, indigenous peoples, Asian peoples, Southeast Asian peoples, there were a lot of people where the gender binary did not exist. So it was just a spectrum of which, and our indigenous people know this too. So that type of experience is not unusual for them. They have seen that their whole lives. They have family members who, express themselves in whatever way they feel comfortable. And that, to me, again, that goes back to that patriarchal and colonialism binary that everybody seems to be caught up in, and that we're trying to break free from. But it's only in the last 400 years or so that we've been forced to fit into that construct, because these things did not exist before. In a lot of those native cultures, the words don't exist for just two. There is a spectrum of language that you can use to describe someone's expression, right? So it's not surprising to me that you would not have experienced that type of, side eye or questioning, because to them, totally lived with that and experienced that, and are not just accepting of it, but it's just like, yeah, that's fine. That's just the way she is.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's some brilliant teaching from Two-Spirited Manitoba that teaches that, where you go back and in some of the simplest indigenous languages, 5,000 years ago, they had at least 5 different words to talk about that gender spectrum. The more advanced languages had 7 different words to talk about that spectrum. And Susie's right, is this whole idea of the patriarchal system, because before, many were matriarchal systems that were overthrown by colonization to become patriarchal systems and to fit into the gender binary that fit the story that was being told. I get very upset at the intensity of the arrogance that people have of thinking that the last 400 years defines everything we are and do.
I have to jump in here,
Yeah.
because this conversation is so timely. Hearing about the beliefs and what people, their values. And first of all, Cynthia, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I have thought of you so often when I work with families who are working on supporting somebody that struggles with mental health, and the acceptance piece is not there. And so many little taglines I've learned from you. So I absolutely love everything you're doing. So I'm in the position that I'm supporting an adult daughter who's been in a relationship with someone for some time. And in his family, there are set beliefs that are, the household enjoys that patriarchal idea. And they went to the rally to support the vaccines and no masks, right? And they have some very, very strong beliefs that are very different to what we stand for in our home. And what I've learned from that is, in supporting my daughter to understand and to work through some of the conversations that come up, that in this family, not only are these beliefs forced upon from a very young age, if you step outside them, there is no place in the family for you. It doesn't work. And it shocks me. It absolutely shocks me. And I never really thought about that when I think about, I'll be careful what I say, but when I think about, how my values and beliefs don't line up with other households. But what do you do when it doesn't work and you no longer have a place in a family if you step outside of those beliefs? And to shed, Geraldine was saying, to shed those layers of actually owning your own truth and standing up for your own beliefs and being okay with that. It actually is learned that it's easier to hide those and bury those, although you still have them. I just find the whole thing fascinating, and this conversation could not be more timely. So I'm learning a lot, and I'm learning the flip side of that coin, where I have a low tolerance for arrogance, and one of my daughters was president of the Gay Straight Alliance at her high school and did wonderful things. And she has the tagline that I had to actually come out in high school that I was straight, because with everything I was involved with, everybody so she tells a comical story about, I had to sit my folks down and say, listen, I'm sorry, but, I'm straight. Anyways, I'm rambling, but I just wanted to share something that I'm working on in supporting my daughter with a better understanding of a family that lacks that understanding. Okay? Crazy.
Kirsten, it makes me think when I'm hearing your response to Cynthia, and one thing that I teach and had to teach myself was the idea of boundaries and setting the boundaries. We talked about this whole call, like Susie, you were talking about, you had to do something that disappointed others, and can you do that? We have the mistaken notion that setting a boundary is going to feel good. And at first, a boundary feels awful. Like when you are setting a boundary, and the understanding is you're setting a boundary for yourself, not to get other people to change, but you're setting a boundary for your own limitations and your own, like, this is what we do, like what you were saying, Kirsten, this is what we do in our family. But setting a boundary, in my experience, I have felt like throwing up. I have felt like shaky. I feel like the earth is going to swallow me whole when I've said no to someone in my family that they weren't used to hearing no from me. It was a really scary experience. And that's something that to be more open about when we talk to people. We sometimes say to people, well, set a boundary, like just say no. And it's like that one moment of saying no, you can feel like you are going to die, like, because it is, as you were saying, Kirsten, in some families, saying no and saying like, no, I'm not going to go along with what the family myths and the family story is. You can be cast out of the tribe. You can be shunned. And we are designed as humans to create connection, and that's where our safety comes from. So setting a boundary can make us feel very unsafe, even though we're heading in the direction of personal safety. At first, it can feel so disorienting. So it's something that I think it does require support of other people. Robin, I'm sure, like the peer support must speak to this, and this, doing this together. It's not something you can do alone. You need support of other people.
Question. Oh, I just have a question to you, Kirsten. And I don't know, I'm just hearing about everything and it just popped in my head. Had this pandemic, COVID, isolation, whatever we're living in, had this not happened, would your daughter have ever found out about these other family beliefs of her boyfriend? Or would I assume they probably would have manifested them in some other way, shape, or form. I don't know. She's laughing.
Well, I think certainly some of the strong beliefs, yeah, certainly some of them, but to the degree where it involves vaccines, masks, and perhaps someone named Trump. I don't think if all those things weren't existing, maybe we wouldn't have been so highlighted. Mm-hmm. So, but you know what I have learned that comes out of that when adult children within families are struggling to take a stance or feel they aren't supported, they can't take a stance. You know what comes out of that I've learned is a culture of lying, a culture of untruths, and a culture of untruths to survive. And in our own family, that's on the top 3 of what we don't do, right? So it's been really interesting. I'll keep you all posted on where that goes. But it's been very interesting.
You know, Kirsten, to build upon what you're saying there, I look at that so from the perspective of a mother, right? As you say, like, I cannot imagine my child having a completely other existence that I don't know about, because they don't feel safe to let me in on what that experience is. That is anathema to why I became a mother. Like, that's not what I was put here to do. That's not why I decided to have children. I want to know my children fully and embrace who they are and celebrate who they are and who they decide to be with. All of those things are very important to me. And that comes from a place of, again, understanding that truth is paramount, and that whatever your truth is, I accept and celebrate that and love you no matter what that is. And to know that there are parents out there and families that don't know who these beloved people are in their lives, I can't understand it. I can't understand it at all. And it makes me so sad, and it makes me so, it makes me feel such a longing for that connection, because that connection, especially between mother and child, should always be there. And, you know, as I was watching, there was a great series on UK talking about the AIDS epidemic of the 80s, and told from the perspective of young people who were going through it. And these young people are living in London, in the city, and living their lives and being fully out. But when they go home, they can't. They go back into the closet, you know, as it were, and their families don't know who they are and are shocked when some of them are diagnosed with AIDS, right? And I thought to myself, like, you had your whole life, you had this beautiful child, but you didn't want to know. You didn't want to know them. All you wanted was this imaginary thing that you'd created and had to live by because of the expectations of others. And because of that, you sacrificed knowing your child, loving your child. I can't understand it. And I won't live that way. And I pity those who do, because you're missing out on the fullness of love and the fullness of really knowing somebody, who they are and what they're about, and all the joy that they bring to others in the world.
Yeah.
And
that's it, right? That's what it's all about. The actual connection, the bond between a parent and a child, the unconditional love that exists. And to actually think that, and I'm trying so hard I keep going back to Cynthia, I'm trying so hard to not be too judgmental, to have some level of understanding. I really, really am. And trust me, I am not a judgmental person. However, the things that come up, you know, I just don't understand, because the fear that a parent like that must live in, the constant fear and angst and anxiety, and that they must live in, that, you know, an adult child could step outside a certain line, and if they did that, then you know, I'm rambling again, but no, I don't relate at all. And
I think that love at its core is about truth and about light, and about standing in your truth and standing in your light and saying, whatever is there, I love you and I embrace you fully. And Robin, I can see you nodding, and I know you have something to add, so I will wrap it up. But that, to me, is the essence of what parenthood should be. And if a parent can't love their child fully and completely, how does that child ever expect anybody else to? So when I think about what we put out into the world, when we raise people who don't understand that a parent's love is unconditional, what is that building out there? And instead of building what we have, imagine if we built a world full of people who understand that they are enough, that they are accepted, that they are celebrated, and now they want to build a world for others that is the same.
Absolutely.
It is one of those hard things, right? Like, my mum will continually say, if my sister who died before I was born didn't die, I wouldn't be here. and she wanted the girl, and she wanted the girl to grow up and get married and have babies. And, you know, first off, I came out as lesbian, and she wasn't so cool, but kind of come around. And then a few years ago, when I said, look, I'm in the wrong body, I'm not going to change this one at the moment. I just want you to get, like, this is how I am. And my mum said to me, don't bring any of that weirdness home. And it's, you know, I've had conversations, right? Because, like, my work name is Robin. My friends call me Rob. And she's like, your name's Robin. I named you Robin and you're a girl. And it's like, I said to her at one point, like, isn't the ultimate aim of a parent just to love their kid for who they are? Like, who they are. And she goes, yes, but you're my daughter. And so there's times where I super struggle with that, right? And there's times I get mad and I'm like, I'm me, I'm the same person. I'm exactly the same person that you birthed, and like I grew up, and I have the same kind of way of being, and I spend my life working with people to live their truth, to actually be able to go, this is me. And there's other times I sit and go, yeah, she grew up in a different time, right? Do I give her... So there's a place where I have compassion for her in that space, and there's times I'm like angry with her, and I'm like, can't you just love me for who I am? And she goes, I do, but don't wear those clothes, or why is your hair like that? Or and so it's, you know, as a kid of a parent doing that, like, I implore all parents just to love your kids no matter what, because they're all amazing and perfect human beings. No matter what they do, they're amazing human beings. And okay, maybe they don't do exactly what you want, but they're still your kid. And even if someone does something that's not great, like, and there's generally reasons for what happens, and just explore, like, why and who that person is and what's happened, and maybe they've had trauma and dealt with it in a certain way or whatever. But if you can just love unconditionally, and that's hard too, Kirsten, right? Because you've got anti-maskers, anti-vaccine people out there, and we make judgments about them, and I don't know their story. And so I try and sit in a place of, I don't know their story that led them to where they are. And so, like, the piece that I try and teach when I'm training peer workers, if we can just be passionately curious about who that person is, then we have a better shot of being able to sit with people wherever they are, even if we don't understand it. As Cynthia always says, sometimes we just accept without understanding that people have a viewpoint that maybe isn't ours. I love that, Susie. Radical compassion. So that's all I've got to say. That's my 2 cents worth.
Oh, more than 2 cents, Robin. And so, yeah, I can call you Rob now. I was going to actually go to Geraldine with all of this too, and you know, spilling on what Kirsten, and I mean, of course, Susie, as you know, unconditional love is what all parents should have. But how do you come to grips and with your own personal truth if it means that you could be shunned by your family, or you're going to lose that personal relationship with the person you love? They all say religion.
I know
religion
people.
Yeah,
I know people very, very close to me who have experienced being shunned. And I come from a background a religious background where that happened. And, you know, Lisa Remini has a whole show about that. And the cost is huge. And that fear of abandonment that sustains is one that leaves a deep scar that requires a lifelong of awareness, work, compassion, love, you know, melting and rebuilding. And Susie, the word that came to mind when you were speaking the first time was something, I didn't write all the notes, but the assumptions that we make about other people. And Rob, you mentioned that as well. You know, it comes down to the assumptions. You don't know their story. And those assumptions that we make about other people are the things that invariably lead us into hot water. And we corner ourselves in the process. And then we, you know, often try and defend ourselves in that corner. But I think it's being curious about, I mean, as coaches, we all know that word, you know, it's our mantra, be curious, and lean away from those assumptions. That doesn't answer your question about how do you navigate being shut away from someone. I think we all have in our lives, if any of us are divorced, if any of us have left a marriage, there have been people who've fallen away, who we've lost, friends that we've lost along the way. And I think it happens to all of us in one way or another, but to others, it happens in an extreme form that I'm not personally familiar with. But it's, it requires love, really, you know, that's what it requires.
Wow. So many things to think about, my goodness. Oh, wow.
That was a circuitous conversation.
But
wow.
You know what, I mean, now more than ever, right, it's the time to kind of reevaluate and take stock. And I want to I'm going to want to continue this conversation next week, because I'm curious too, because I'm meeting so many incredible women, and they are coaches. I mean, it's Linda every day is such a beauty thing. And, you know, you introduced us to Susan. Unfortunately, she had to go to a meeting. And now Geraldine. And besides, I have my peer support workers, you know, on the right-hand column. Yes, so I know, I'm getting to know so much about mental health. And Susie and Cynthia have been sort of my rocks, you know, and they have so much more information. So yeah, you know, now if you're reevaluating, what kind of coaching do you look for? And then there's so many things out there, right? And whether it's business, if it's life, or if it's, you know, doing something more than what you are. But yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of done a lot of deeper thinking, which normally I don't, and sort of was the beginning of this conversation, being in such a funk and you know, wanting to just let things slide instead of being the person that everybody depends on. And I think, you know, I think a lot of women and men are in the same boat. And going way back to Cynthia's comment, you know, it's not what's between our legs that defines us, it's what's between our ears. And I think having more conversations like this definitely helps, because then we get to know more about each other, right, Robin? And then there's no assumptions made. And we definitely want to follow Kirsten's little story here. Yeah, because it'll, you know, certainly a lot of us can learn from what you're going through too, Kirsten. But I guess, you know, my biggest question is, where are we all going to be? Like, when we're not looking at each other on a little screen. Anybody?
I'm going to be hugging everyone.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
You mean after COVID?
Yes.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
I'm going to be the hug monster. I'm going to be like random people in the street. Hello. Would you like a hug? If you
I'll be
don't-
joining you. Yeah.
I'm going to be wearing heels. Whatever I'm doing, I'm going to get out of my tights and sweats and have on heels.
Oh, sorry, that was a bit like wrong, wasn't that? To kill me for doing that. I got excited.
Oh, But anyways, it's been so wonderful. And you know what, Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us. It's, you know, you bring such a beautiful perspective for us women.
Well,
For
you're welcome.
yes. Okay. Well, everybody, go out and enjoy the sunshine. Soak in those vitamin D rays. I totally approve of it. It's got my stamp of approval. Might be adding another little glass of wine with that too at the end of the day. That always helps. And that's what I want to do. I want to have you all here. Susie's been to our backyard for a nice glass of wine, and you know, maybe do a little taping of the Hugh virtual chat, but not virtual, Hugh in version, so in person. Thank you so much, Geraldine. You're part of the crew. Feel free, join in every Tuesday.
Thank you.
Next Tuesday, we're going to go a little bit earlier at 11:15, if that's okay with everybody. And personal and executive coaching, what does that mean? And you have to come back, Geraldine. We got Linda on. So come with all of your experience and knowledge and all of the different courses, because my goodness, I didn't realize we were that complicated and needed that much help.
Complicated. Complicated.
Oh, good. All right. Have a beautiful Tuesday, ladies. And
Thanks,
Robin.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
See
You're
ya.
welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, Cynthia. Bye-bye.